Hey guys, it's Lish from Devalishangell, and today I'm going to show you how to make this cute and sexy romper, very much Selena vibes, super comfy, so let's get started. And by the way, there's no pattern needed. For this romper, I'm using a very soft lyric cut fabric with a 4-way stretch. For the pants part of the romper, I'm just tracing a pair of pants that fit me well. And I do wish that I would have made these pants longer because the romper ended up being a little short on me. So I do recommend, if you're doing this and you're chasing pants, add a good generous 2 inches at the bottom, because you can always make it shorter but you can't make it longer. So here I didn't want the flare at the bottom to be as wide, so I took it in and I added that part on the top for the elastic. So when I'm trying to chase the back part of the pants, it's usually kind of folded in a bit. So I just measure how far it's folded in, so that way I can add that to the side, because the back and the front are usually different patterns. The curve in the middle is usually slightly different, with the back curve sticking out a bit further. So here I'm just feeling through the seam and kind of marking where that back seam goes, and then I'm just gonna connect the dots and add room for my waistband. And the pants that I use were like a little big, that's why I didn't really add a lot of seam allowance, but it's always nice to add a bit of seam allowance, like a fourth of an inch or even more, because you can always take it in. If the fabrics are different stretches, you want to think about that too. I always double check to make sure that I traced out my pattern correctly, and then once everything looks good, I go ahead and cut out both pattern pieces. I really need a bigger rotary mat. Can you guys believe I've been using this little mat for everything? And then I cut out 2 more pieces. Make sure that you flip the pattern pieces, that way you have 2 legs and you don't end up with 2 right legs. For large pieces, I like to trace it and then cut out the piece, that way I can make sure that the pattern didn't move while I was cutting it. It also helps to label which ones are the front and which ones are the back, so that's why I have B and F on my pattern. For the top part, I measured from one of my sides around my neck and to my other side. That was about 46 inches. And then I measure how wide I want the top. Mine was about 5.5 inches. Now I'm going to cut 2 rectangles with those measurements, 5.5 by 46 inches. Now everything's cut and it's time to start sewing. So I'm going to sew along these 2 curves first. Sew back pieces together and front pieces together. So I'm going to pin that down and then sew. I am sewing pretty much this whole thing on a serger, but if you don't have a serger, you can still sew this whole thing on a regular sewing machine with any type of stretch stitch, like a zigzag or hem stitch. There are a couple parts that I will sew on a regular sewing machine. So here I'm just sewing together those 2 curves. Now I put the back part and the front part right sides together and pin and sew along the inside leg part. So here I'm just sewing that inside leg part. Now I'm going to pin and sew the sides of the pants together, but I do want a cute little slit at the bottom, so I'm making a mark about 5 inches up on both sides, so I'm not going to sew past that mark. Here I'm just sewing the sides together, and as you can see here, this is where I left open the bottom for the slit. So at this point I tried the pants on and I felt like the top part was a little too high, so here I'm just trimming off a bit from the top. So now I'm going to add a 1/2 inch elastic to the top for the waistband part, so it fits nice and snug. So I'm just sewing it around the top, and then I'm going to fold it over and sew on top of it with my sewing machine. I am ever so slightly just pulling it a tiny bit, and I really mean like just a tiny bit. That way it will guarantee to fit snug on my waist. Here I'm just folding over the elastic that I just sewn on, and I'm using my regular sewing machine to sew it down with a zigzag stitch. For the little slit on the bottom of the leg part, I'm just going to fold over the edges and hem them down with a straight stitch. For this part, for the slit, I usually overlap the top part of the little like triangle where the pieces meet just a little bit. That way it's nice and clean. So now I'm just gonna hem the bottom of the pants. Since the bottom of the pants are flare and they don't really need to stretch around anything, I can just use a straight stitch. But if I were to make the pants like skinny and then we need to stretch over my foot or something, then I would need a stretch stitch, like a zigzag stitch. So now the little wrap top, I'm just gonna kind of try it on and make a mark where I want to make it skinnier, which is around my neck. That way it's not super bulky around my neck. So in between those two marks that I just made, I'm just gonna cut it in a bit so that way this part is thinner. Then I pin that rectangle onto the other one. That way I can mirror what I just cut out onto the other one as well. I have both sides of the rectangles pinned together and I'm gonna sew all the way down both sides of them. So I'm adding some clear elastic on top here, but it's optional. You don't need to add elastic. It will still be fine. I just kind of like to add elastic to parts of garments that need to stretch a lot so it doesn't get like overstretched. So once I finish sewing both of those sides, I'm just gonna turn it right side out. So here I kind of just tried it on and made a mark right here and right here so I know where I want to sew the top part onto the pants. So here I'm just sewing that part on with a zigzag stitch. And I'm going to do the same for the other side. And I kind of make note of how I wrap it around my neck. So I kind of like twist it once, that way it will twist around my neck, if that makes sense. So here's what it's looking like so far, super cute. And I just kind of want to scrunch the front and the back part. So I'm just taking my 1/2 inch elastic and I'm just going to sew it right there. And I'm going to pull it while I sew. So I leave some extra elastic in the back, that way I can grip it and pull it as I'm sewing. So I'm pulling it hard and I'm trying to keep it straight and sewing it down that seam in the front. So I'm also going to add an elastic piece down the middle in the back. So I just kind of fixed this one part right here because it was sticking out. So I just seam ripped it a tiny bit, pulled that edge down and sewed it again, which was super easy. And then I kind of made it a little short, but it was okay. It was still cute. So again, this is the final result. I really liked it. My only problem was that I made it just a little short, about 2 inches short, but it was super comfy. I definitely would make it again. Here's a cute little slits on the side. If you have any questions, just comment them down below. You can always follow me on Instagram to see more of my work, and I do offer one-on-one sewing classes. Thanks again for watching.